Добрий день.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olha Atamanova, and it's my pleasure to see everybody who joins us in Ukraine Media Center Confirmed today. Today, joining us in Ukraine Media Center is a delegation of European Parliament deputies. So first of all, I would like to greet our guests here today and thank for being here with us today. Thank you very much for this. Thank you for your incessant support of Ukraine. It's a pleasure to see some of the delegates not for the first time in the media center, so thank you for that. The topic of today's press conference is solidarity of European Union to Ukraine, a view from the European Parliament. So we will be talking specifically about the support extended by European Parliament to our country. Let me remind you that on the 20th of March, Ukraine has received 4.5 billion euro of transitional funding from European Union within the framework of Ukraine Facility program. And it's also contemplated that shortly we are likely to receive the second tranche, and implementation of this program will definitely help us reinforce our economy, will help us raise more investments, which will result in the growth of our GDP. So today we will be talking, I hope, specifically about implementation of this program, Ukraine Facility. We will be talking about military support of the European Union, of Ukraine by the European Union, and I hope we will be able to touch upon the topic of the latest events of trade between the European Union and Ukraine. So let me introduce our guests today. Joining us in our studio are David McAllister, the head of European Parliament Committee for Foreign Affairs. Also joining us is Bernd Lange, the chair of the Committee on International Trade and chair of the Conference of Committee Chairs. Also joining us is Christian Sylvain-Bouchain, Michael Galler, Nathalie Loiseau, Pascal Canfin, Viola von Kramon, and also joining us is John van Overveld. Good afternoon, dear friends. So let me give the floor to you. Mr. David, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Also a warm welcome from my side. Thank you for hosting us here at the Ukraine Media Center. We are indeed 7 members of the European Parliament. We are committee chairs. We are experts on Ukraine. We come from different countries. We have different political backgrounds. We belong to different political factions. But what we have in common is that we came here first and foremost to reaffirm that the European Union and especially the European Parliament's unwavering support to Ukraine in the unprovoked, unjustified and illegal war of aggression Russia has waged against it. We also came to Kiev to pay respect to the many courageous defenders of Ukraine who have fallen in its existential fight for freedom and democracy. And that's why we laid flowers on the wall of remembrance of the fallen for Ukraine this morning. We met yesterday with representatives of civil society and with our colleagues from the Verkhovna Rada, including the Speaker, committee chairs, and representatives of the different political groups. Today, we met with government representatives. We met the Prime Minister. We met Mr. Yamak from the President's office. We met the Vice Foreign Minister. And yesterday we also met the Defense Minister. Over the past 10 years, the European Parliament has supported Ukraine's democratic institutions, especially the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, through a variety of legal, of political, and practical support measures. The European Parliament Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought in 2022 was awarded to the Ukrainian people, and a renewed memorandum of understanding between the European Parliament and the Verkhovna Rada was signed in November 2023. Last year we also started a cooperation project on a committee-to-committee basis, and this visit represents a continuation of this initiative. I want to make 3 short points. First, On the need to support Ukraine's defense, let me stress first of all that all free and democratic countries around the world need to answer as soon as possible to the calls made by Ukrainian leaders over the last few months. Ukraine urgently needs increased military support to defend itself and win this war. Our own credibility also depends on this. The European Parliament has repeatedly and consistently reaffirmed our support for providing military aid to Ukraine for as long as necessary and in whatever form necessary for Ukraine to win. We in the European Union need to deliver on our commitments to provide Ukraine with the military support it has requested, including by supplying Ukraine with 1 million munitions and missiles as soon as possible. To do so, no stone should be left unturned. We need to explore all options to meet Ukraine's needs, notably by continuing to donate from our member states' defense stocks, redirecting existing orders to prioritize the needs of Ukraine, and placing new necessary orders to sustain Ukraine's defense against the Russian aggression. The second point I want to make is on financial support to Ukraine. Let me underline that the European Union and its member states are already the world leaders. However, what we have done so far is not enough. This is why I welcome the agreement reached among EU institutions on the 5th of February this year on a Ukraine facility having a total budget of 50 billion euros. The Ukraine facility will pool the European Union's budget support to Ukraine into one single instrument, providing coherent, predictable and flexible support for the period from 2024 to 2027. And a third point I would like to make, that is about starting accession negotiations and a credible and merit-based enlargement process. Ukraine's membership of the European Union represents a geostrategic investment in a united and strong Europe that can be achieved with the right leadership, resolve and vision. The European Parliament is convinced of the need to start accession negotiations without delay once the two outstanding Commission recommendations are fulfilled. This will irreversibly anchor Ukraine's path towards EU membership. Member states also know what is at stake, and the negotiating framework should be adopted without delay. And finally, EU accession is a complex process of adaptation. We all know this. The European Parliament has full confidence about Ukraine's determination, notably with the incentives in place and the expectations of the international donor community linked to recovery and reconstruction. Ukraine is not starting from scratch. The association agreement and the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement are a good basis to build on. Ukraine has also undertaken successful reforms such as decentralization, digitalization or land reform. This should inspire confidence. The prospect of EU membership, coupled with EU support under the Ukraine Facility for Recovery and Reconstruction, is the best possible motivation and guarantee to keep up the momentum and the transformation of Ukraine. And now I hand over to my colleague Bernd Lange.
Thanks a lot, and ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we have to apologize that we are a little bit late, but of course we were really in a deep discussion with the authorities here in Ukraine on this support. And as David said, of course, the most urgent support is in the military support, no doubt about. But on the other side, it's also really important to stabilize the economic development. And we are really on your side for a long time with several elements to stabilize economic development. First of all, we are really ready, and we gave a lot of financial support for stabilizing the budget, the so-called macro-financial assistance, and then the project just mentioned by David from February this year, so that there is enough space for the budget of Ukraine, and specifically also to give support for investment, specifically also in the industrialized area, so that there is a perspective of economic growth, and also regarding growth and trade. And this is the second element. Yes, we have the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement concluded some years ago, where a lot of elements are in which give a possibility for intensive exchange with the European Union. And I guess it's a good ground for getting also a reformed trade agreement in the next years as an intermediate between the situation now and the accession to the European Union. And we should start now the negotiation about the modernization of this deep and comprehensive free trade agreement. Linked to this trade agreement, of course, is the situation that at the moment we, as European Parliament, adopted for the third time now the clear perspective for Ukraine to have a free quota and free tariff-free access to the European market. And this, I guess, is also an important part of the game to stabilize economic development. And I guess this is covering at the moment around about 2.1 billion tariffs, which are now granted to the Ukraine producer, and this is a big help to stabilize economic performance. And fourthly, linked to the economic stability, of course, is also the situation that the Ukraine will not be destabilized by sanctions from the European Union, which are not really enforced. So we have a situation that, of course, we have established a 13 sanction package against Russia to help Ukraine, but unfortunately we see a lot of circumventions so that products from the European Union are delivered via other countries to Russia. Dual-use goods sometimes used in military equipment, but also sometimes illegal in economic areas. So this has to be really forbidden, and we have to look how to guarantee this. So we are in contact with some countries, and of course we are looking also to the supply chain so that European companies can really enforce not to deliver such goods to Russia, and this would also help to stabilize the economy here in Ukraine. And lastly, of course, we have to look also regarding the reconstruction of a lot of companies and a lot of infrastructure in Ukraine. And I'm clearly of the opinion that this should be paid also by Russian citizens and Russian companies. So we are looking to the assets of Russia in Europe and European banks, and also the revenue of this asset, so that we can use this money also to stabilize the economic development in Ukraine.
Пане Бернд, відразу буде.
Mr. Bernd, right away I'm having a question to you. In continuation of topic of the support of our economy, we understand that the situation for the time being in Ukrainian-Polish border is of concern to all of the Ukrainians and not only Ukrainians. So in your opinion, what can be done and what needs to be done to have the border unblocked?
Of course, the situation is illegal. So we have a clear European performance regarding trade policy and regarding relations to third countries, and the actions were illegal. And the former Polish government got also the clear message from the European Union. And now we have the situation that there's a protest from the agricultural sector, from some farmers on trying to block the border, and we are trying to give some possibilities to reduce the competition which they fear because of imports from Ukraine, like some licenses models, like some direct support for farmers, so that the situation can be calmed down. Personally, I have my doubts that all the protests coming from the farmers are really linked to the import from Ukraine. There are a lot of other reasons behind. Even there's also Russian interference in the action of the farmers, so we have to be careful to have this one-way link with Ukraine goods coming into Europe. And secondly, we are now going on with tariffs on Russian agriculture products, so that the situation in the agriculture market will also be more relaxed, and I hope this will also lead to a better situation regarding the border. And this has to be solved soon.
Друге питання щодо військового.
Yet another question is about the military support. It's no secret to anybody that the military support of the European Union is of utmost importance to us. So what will the new Ukrainian Assistance Fund contemplate? What will it include? Thank you.
We have the chairwoman of our subcommittee on security and defense with us, so I think it's fair that we also give her the floor. Let me just say at the beginning, I welcome the decision taken by the EU member states at the Foreign Affairs Council meeting in March to increase the financial ceiling of the European Peace Facility by €5 billion only for Ukraine by establishing a dedicated Ukraine assistance facility, but I'll leave the rest to Nathalie Loiseau.
Yeah, thank you. So far, efforts to provide military assistance to Ukraine from the EU and its member states reached 28 billion euros, among which you have already 6 billion euros from the European Peace Facility, and there will be additional 5 billion euros who just have been decided. But we also have to increase and speed up the manufacturing of ammunition which are promised to Ukraine. We have not reached yet the 1 million ammunition which were promised. It is really getting faster and at a broader level now, but because we have not been able to manufacture and deliver to Ukraine what was promised, we are also purchasing ammunition worldwide through the initiative of the Czech president, which is going on full speed. And I'm confident that very soon ammunition will be coming to Ukraine through this means. I also would like to touch upon the use of windfall profits of frozen assets, Russian frozen assets. There is more and more consensus in the European Union to use these windfall profits of frozen assets in order to finance military assistance and to include Ukraine into the next European defense investment program, so that military equipment and ammunition can be manufactured in Ukraine. So the reflection is going on, consensus is being built, and I'm hopeful that there is a positive decision as early as next June on this.
Дякую вам, шановні колеги.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Do we have any questions on the floor? Please join our conversation. Oksana Tkachenko, Ukrainian TV channel 1+1 Media.
To thank you. We are pleased to welcome you here in Kyiv in such a difficult time, and you've made a big, long journey. I have two questions. The first one, it is mentioned that Ukraine need to fulfill or implement 5 required indicators to receive the second tranche. what are these indicators, requirements? And the second question is about recovery. We've seen recent devastating attacks of Russia on our Ukrainian infrastructure. The worst situation is in Kharkiv. Have you discussed with Ukrainian authorities this issue, and in what way the European Union authorities can help us? Is there any additional funds maybe in among Ukraine facility program? Thank you.
We have so many colleagues who are also knowledgeable on Ukraine, so I would invite colleagues. Would one of you, Viola, Michael, do you want to share the answer?
Definitely. Thanks for the question. We have discussed that very intensively, and I can only tell you that our interlocutors, no matter with whom we were speaking, were very much concerned. We were asking what is needed, but it seems to be that the solution they found is a temporary solution, so 4 and 4 hours cut off the energy and 4 hours energy provided. That is, of course, nothing you can rely on as a citizens. But what we understood is generators are on hand. For the time being, it seems the days become longer. There's less heated need, but I understand that the protection system, the air defense system, will also be not mainly, but more located to the east. I can't go into more details, but that is what we have heard and what we have spoken with our interlocutors. But in general terms, I don't think it's about money. It's mainly about air defense system, it's about ammunition, it's about protection of critical infrastructure. And as you have said, everyone expected that for December. Russians have decided to postpone that. Probably they had to produce more of their missiles and their ballistics. It is terrible to see which quantities they use on an almost daily basis. And we were witnessing this yesterday exactly here in Kiev. And that was actually, I wouldn't say good, but it was very realistic to feel how close that war is to everyone. Be it in Lviv or be it in Kharkiv, you live all under threat. And for this, I think the visit was extremely useful, so to say.
Well, there will not be more money in the Ukraine facility. This first transitional payment was 4.5 billion that has been paid out, and also the Prime Minister told us that they are expecting another 1.5 billion in April. That's where we stand, and the internal discussions about further conditions to be fulfilled, well, I think Ukraine is working on them. There are, as far as I know, 2 are missing. Forgive me, I'm not aware which of the 2 that is, but I'm pretty sure you will manage to settle it, and so that the next payment will go ahead.
Дякую. Шановні колеги, якщо маєте питання, дайте про це знати.
Dear colleagues, if we have more questions on the floor, please just let us know.
Everyone, my name is Taras Muklyak, Guildhall News Agency. Thank you very much for coming. So it's like all of us, we do hope that there will be that next US aid package towards Ukraine, but at the same time we understand that we have to be ready for any situation, and we do need a kind of a plan B if there won't be that US aid towards Ukraine. So of course all of us, we do expect to see the European Union as a leader, right, in this situation. So if there is a discussion of the need to adjust the EU's military aid strategy towards Ukraine, if there won't be that US aid towards Ukraine, or it will be reduced. This is the first question, and if I may, just very briefly, the second one. So the EU Parliament elections are coming, and without putting a finger on any political party, we understand that even the weakening of the democratic political parties is the weakening of Ukraine. It's true, actually, and we are really concerned because of that possible far-right and Russian proxy strengthening within the EU. So the second question, if there will be that time to answer, is: are you satisfied with the strategy on countering Russian interference into EU Parliament election? At least the intent is there, definitely. And if there is a strategy applied by the democratic political parties to counter actually that far-right turn in EU. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. I would suggest that on the first question, Johan van Overveld, the budget chair, takes the floor, and then perhaps on cybersecurity, counterinformation, Natalie.
Thank you. With respect to your first question on the American aid package, indeed, there's a lot of doubt at the moment whether that will come true or not. I think we should not be overly pessimistic given the latest news coming out of Washington. But anyway, a plan B has to be envisaged. And as far as our discussions with the Ukrainian authorities are concerned, they see mainly two venues. I cannot go into too much detail, but there's of course also first of all the IMF program, which is up and running and where there are possibilities. And secondly, and that was emphasized a lot, there is also the possibility to make more elaborate use of the frozen assets, because now the discussion is mainly on the earnings, the interest on the assets that have been frozen. But there might be some creative thing to do with the asset as such, the frozen asset as such, which might make available a lot more money in the short run. The discussion with respect to that is ongoing. And as you probably know, the British government or the British Foreign Secretary launched a very sensible idea, to my humble opinion, with respect to that. But that seemed to be the two major venues in the case of the United States not coming forward.
Natalie Loiseau.
On the second question, maybe I should bring you back to Europe, to our countries, and have you say just what you said, that the weakening of democratic parties in Europe is the weakening of Ukraine, because you are absolutely right. And we know that Putin invested massively into supporting far-right parties throughout the European Union in order to have proxies or useful idiots spreading his propaganda. We are democratic societies, so there is no censorship per se. But we are more and more, member states are more and more exposing the realities of foreign interferences. They are making it public. They are attributing cyber attacks or information manipulation or deep fakes in public, so that citizens realize that the disinformation efforts are not only about Ukraine, they are massively about Ukraine and the Russian war of aggression, but they are also taking part into our democratic debates, domestic democratic debates, and it's more and more well known in our societies that there is this Russian influence. And I would say that the very recent tragic terrorist attack in Moscow was an illustration of this very distant relation with reality and with truth. When there are obvious reasons to believe that the terrorist attack came from ISIS, and you have the Russian president immediately pointing finger at Ukraine, within Western European societies, it came as a shock. I would say even for far-right politicians, to see a Russian president ignoring reality and preferring to have the usual culprit, Ukraine. Whether it will be enough, I'm not certain, because far-right usually builds on dissatisfaction, anger, concerns, and it's been active in pointing the finger at Ukrainian farmers and Ukrainian grain as a reason for the anger of European farmers. So we have to fight against that. But we have to fight with democratic instruments and democratic weapons, and not using the same tools as authoritative regimes do.
Very briefly, I think you're concerned that there might not be in the European Parliament enough support. No worries about that. We have had on all the Ukraine declarations and legislation, we have had around 90% support. And if it were in the worst case, then in the next Parliament it was only 80%, that is still more than enough. So in this regard, I think this institution is safe for Ukraine.
And perhaps in addition, we have a new department in the European Commission looking indeed to state-organized interference, specifically in the social media. And they are quite active in looking exactly where the target is and how this is working and developing measures against. So this guy, Mr. Güllner, leading this agency is really doing a good job. And secondly, we have the Digital Service Act, the new part of the regulation of the digital sphere. And there's also a clear obligation against fake news, against hate speech. This legislation is into force since 19th of February. And specifically now there are investigations against TikTok. And I hope that we will have a reasonable result quite soon so that we can stop also some activities before the European elections.
Друзі, якщо маєте питання.
Dear friends, do we have any more questions on the floor? Please let us know in case you do. Well, I'm having a question regarding the new European defense strategy. So what is necessary, what needs to be done to reinforce European defense industry that will directly influence our defense capacities?
Sorry for monopolizing the floor. Yes, we just had this communication from the European Commission on a new European defense investment strategy and a new European defense investment program. We build on what we first started to do in order to support Ukraine, that is to purchase together, to procure together different member states working together in order to buy military equipment together, which means that we would be less fragmented, have a smaller number of different types of military equipment. Because if you add up the military expenses of European member states, it reaches 280 billion euros a year, which is not bad. But if you have that many different types of tanks and fighter jets and ships and everything, well, you see it in Ukraine, that you have to be trained into very different military equipment. So more and more joint procurement is needed for every sort of military equipment, and also supporting manufacturing of military equipment. So far we were able to support research and development of new military equipment. But what we see here in Ukraine, it's both a 21st century warfare with very high-level technological military equipment, and a very conventional one. So we need both. We need to be able to prepare for the future, but also to manufacture more massively, more classical military equipment. So for this, the very core of the issue is money. There's no surprise about it. And recently the European Council tasked the Commission to come back with a number of creative suggestions, which means that there is no consensus yet, but we know that our national budgets or the European budget as it is will not be able to provide sufficient funding for what is needed. The European Defence Industry Programme builds on 1.5 billion euros for 2 years. Well, that's better than nothing, but that's not much. So there is a lot of thinking about Eurobonds, for instance. There is no consensus about it, but it might be one thing, and other options are being considered, and the next European Council in June should be able to take a decision. So we have all the creative ideas together. For instance, being able to pre-order more military equipment than immediately needed by a single member state, having stockpiles of military equipment, to send them to partners like Ukraine, or to use them for a specific military operation. This is something we didn't have before. We cannot ask our defense industry to have their own stockpiles because it costs a lot of money. So we have to provide this sort of funding to be for better preparedness, if I may say so. So there are a number of very positive and very needed initiatives in this program. We'll have to adopt it. So far it's an initiative from the Commission, so it has to go through the Council and the European Parliament, but there is a vast majority on both sides which is really committed to making these improvements. And one part of the whole scheme is to support Ukrainian defense industry and to include it already in the European program.
In addition to what Natalie Wazor just so rightly described, I just want to make one point. What we have to do now, and what we have to do now is to make fast progress on the recently proposed European Defence Industry Programme. This programme, along with strengthening the European defence industrial base, aims at reconstructing and developing Ukraine's defence industrial and technological base so that you can produce the capabilities you need to defend yourself and improve interoperability and integration with the European defence.
Я хочу подякувати вам ще раз.
I would like to thank you once again. I would like to thank the representatives of all the mass media who keep telling the world the truth about this war. I would like to thank our guests for the support that you're extended to us on a systemic basis. Thank you very much. Let's continue working together for our victory. We want to thank our security and defense forces. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.